Good morning, this is Tom. This is Negotiating with Jesus, and I will do my little blah, blah, blah here. I'll tell you some of the things I've been doing, because that's as far as I've gotten on my own YouTube channel. I'm working on narrowing the discussions, maybe making it useful, this channel. Maybe not, I don't know. So I just finished a video. So it's the end of the work week. It's now Saturday. Got a couple jobs out, so made myself useful at work. So I'll be employed probably for another week. And it's honestly employment. Guys, as an old guy, and maybe there's a young guy watching, guys, the main thing you do at work is find something that you can do and do it well enough that they give you money that week. Work, the system that we have is a at-will system. And employers pay you a living wage. They are not here to make you rich. They do not pay a wealthy wage. No one pays a wealthy wage. They pay a living wage. They want you to remain alive so that they can pay for your services next week. A living wage in an at-will employment scenario. Generally, you're not under contract unless you're a baseball player or something. The agreement is, I will work for you as long as you'll have me. And your employer has the commitment that you will show up as long as you want to. So the negotiation has to work out that both are happy enough to do it week by week. So I probably will have a job next week. And I hope to have a couple jobs because I preach as well. I hope that they allow me to preach again next week. I watched a video today, Game Theory by Veritasium. So Veritasium did a very fascinating discussion of game theory. And game theory is called game theory just because they gave it a name. What is the game of life? What is the system we're operating within? And game theory tried to figure out, and it's based on the prisoner's dilemma, how much should people cooperate or how much should you take advantage of other people if you're playing a game? And life is a win or lose type game. So it's not a game, but it sort of is. It's like that's what they call the battle of the sexes. It's not a game, but people kind of treat it like a game. It's kind of a game. What are relationships? They're kind of a dance. They're kind of a game. It's kind of a dance contest. And you see people who can dance well, and you're like, man, I wish I could dance like that. And like, you're stumbling around. Everyone's not great at relationship. And you see marriages fail and they don't move on to the next round. So that dance is complicated. So this Veritasium game theory video, I highly recommend it because if you're going to spend 15, 20 minutes watching a video today, watch one that's very interesting and useful. So the conclusion of the video was cooperation is the way to win the game. You have to cooperate. And then, so it's be nice. Also, there's some amount of retaliation. Be honest. Retaliate. There was like 4 or 5 principles the guy came out with. And it was be generous, but be nice, cooperate, also don't be a pushover. You've got to, and be honest, be clear. So anyway, the video was worth watching, Veritasium. It was a nice discussion of this idea of how this scientist experimented on strategies for competing or cooperating. So, Veritasium game theory. Also watching The Rest is History. So The Rest is History is doing a series on Luther, a 5-part series on Martin Luther, 1500. So Luther comes to be a key player in the Reformation, which is what happened at about that time, 1500. There was a split in the Roman Catholic Church, and the Protestants, the protesters, wanted to protest some of the actions of the church, and Martin Luther started, guess what brand of protesters he started? The Lutherans. Yeah, Luther started the Lutherans. They protested some of the structure of the church that dominated Europe. And it's the Roman Catholic Church, and they came up with some ideas like Scripture, sola scriptura. The Scripture alone should be our guide, and faith in Jesus should be the only thing that matters. And it's not faith in a priest that's between you and Jesus. It's just you and Jesus, and all these various things. So I'm watching this video, and it was good. And the rest is history. Guys are very enjoyable. Tom Holland and Dominic Sandbrook, fun to watch. They're jolly chaps. They say, they're amusing. Their stories are colorful. It's not clear that they're the best historians in the world, because I'm also watching kind of a rebuttal or a reaction video by Glen Scrivner at Speak Life and a couple experts on Luther that he has that says, well, they're saying, yeah, some of the things they're not really nailing it with Luther. They're trying to be a little more gracious with Luther. So the thing I'll say about that is, one of the things that's fascinating, I'll just pick one thing in Luther, and the rest is history. I also watched Civil War, the making of America. The Titanic videos were fantastic. If you want to watch a 4 or 5-part series on the sinking of the Titanic, the building and the sinking and the people, it just was wonderful. The Titanic, on the rest is history. But Luther in some ways wants to push back against the Roman Catholic Church. They are not interested. They have a schism. They break away. Luther breaks away, and the rest is history. One of the things that was interesting is Luther in some way despised the Jews, or had some kind of grudge that he couldn't get past. And there's a hint that this he's in Germany, Austria, Sweden, Switzerland, somewhere. He's somewhere up there. And this kind of dislike of the Jews, if you remember, about 400 years later, we have a big dust-up, and the Jews are involved, and it is one of the most horrifying tragedies that you could imagine. The Holocaust, and I'm not a Holocaust denier. It's pretty clear that the Jews got a pretty bad drubbing in World War II. Gas chambers, that can't be good. That can't go anywhere positive. When you gas the people that you despise, kill them. So there was a hint that this hatred or intense dislike Luther had for the Jews, and I don't know exactly why. The idea that there's a group that you can call the Christ killers is very odd, and I push back against that, because I'm the Christ killer. I have this sense that Jesus died for my sins. Rome are the people. The Roman authority are the ones who are able to crucify and to manage capital punishment. The Jews are not. The Jews have Jesus arrested. The Jews are his enemy. But the Jews also are all the first followers. They're all the followers are Jews. So Jews have a fantastic, interesting role in all of human history. and they have a role in the crucifixion of Jesus, and so do I. I'm not mad at the Jews. I love the Jews. I love Jesus, who's a Jew. Jesus is fantastic. You can't really, I don't find a lot of criticism for Jesus. And if you have criticism for Jesus, whatever. There are people who criticized him and killed him. It's not like that's hard to figure out. It's a little hard because he seemed to be doing good things, and then they killed him because he was accumulating some sort of power. And that's a whole thing. So I was going to talk about Luther. I mentioned Luther. This is just one of the interesting things was Luther apparently doesn't like the Jews, whatever. Another series they did was on the Civil War, and just that's just a fascinating history. Is so fascinating. So the Civil War, one of the things that struck me was at one point they said a huge mistake made in the Civil War was when Grant signed the surrender with Lee, when Lee surrendered his army at Appomattox, whatever. Grant gave them kind of an honorable, they surrendered, and Grant treated them with honor and allowed them to leave as gentlemen, not the losers. They lost, but he allowed them to ride their horses, keep their weapons. And the rest is history. History guys thought that was an odd take on how to treat people who betrayed their country. They were rebels. They deserters or betrayers or whatever, and then they signed an honorable kind of, or treated them with honor. And they thought that could have been a mistake because the strife of race relations remained. And I know that in my time, in the late 60s, there were still some terrible civil rights violations for the Black community, which was to be, equalized. And this idea of racism remained. If you know anything about the 60s, that there were whites only, blacks only places because segregation was still absolutely in place. So that was just interesting that they thought, much like Luther, they thought here's a seed that was planted in the Civil War peace agreement, the surrender that they in some way said the South was just doing their honorable thing. They just had their beliefs that Black people were to be slaves, and at the end they're like, yeah, you're not wrong. You're honorable men. That they should have got more of a drubbing. I don't know, the time of healing or whatever for the South was a long, hard journey as well. So I did Scrivner. I'm on the book of Acts. I'm going to conclude this. We're 13 minutes in. Reading the book of Acts. So at church we do Bible studies. We're on the books of the Acts of the Apostles. Jesus in the Gospels does his thing, and Jesus is clearly a greater person than any I've ever witnessed or heard of. Jesus is superior in some way that's just ridiculous. And there's not a close second. And I don't care who you put up. I don't care. Jesus stands alone in history. Then he ascends to heaven in some way, mysterious way. He disappears from the earth. And we could sure use a leader like that. And we're going to have to pick between leaders who are far, clearly inferior. And they'll do the best they can, maybe, or they're terrible people. You get to decide if your leaders are terrible or, saints. We just had a big discussion about saints. We did a Bible study. We talked about saints, and I believe that saints are pretty common. I'm trying to if you call Peter Saint Peter, I'm trying to diminish his saint status as someone who's above the normal people. I like to think of Peter as a normal person. He was a wonderful character. If you read the Gospels, you find Peter just a regular chap who's just doing wonderful things. He's bold, he's blustery, and then he does something really stupid, and it's like, yeah, that's the kind of person I love. Those people, do great things and then do really stupid things, so that you realize they're the same as you and I. So Acts, we're going to read a lot about how the church just springs up. So Jesus springs up in the Gospels. It's like he comes out of nowhere. What the? And he fits all the patterns that had been spoken of, all this prophetic word, that there was going to be a great leader from the Jews, and he's going to be king like David. He's going to be a leader like Moses. Jesus just springs up out of nowhere, and they kill him. And it's like he springs up out of the grave like nobody has done. And then he disappears, and the church springs up out of nowhere. These people who follow Jesus and have no power at all, and then in some way take over the world, the Western world. Certainly Christianity, following Jesus, is something that is in every aspect of the West, and is actually getting into every aspect of the East, the entire world, north, south, east, west. Jesus' influence is just ridiculous. So the church springs up out of nowhere, the book of Acts. And I think I'm just going to let it go at that. There was my rambling. Today I have to do taxes. I have to get the taxes in because deadline's approaching. I have all mine done. I have to do my daughter's. Change my guitar strings. I've got a little retreat coming up where I'm going to go away for 4 days, 3.5 days. And spiritual retreats are fantastic. I highly recommend, and I've been involved in this type of activity for 35 years. And you'd be amazed at how wonderful it is to put everything aside and just think about love and goodness and mercy. And it is just healing. So if if you're hurt, need healing, I recommend the church. Being involved with people who in some way want to dedicate their lives, whether they're good at it or bad at it, they want to dedicate their lives to the idea, what if we could love better? What if we could heal instead of harm each other? What if we could forgive? It's like, dang, that might be helpful. So think about it. Do whatever you want. Who am I to you? I'm some dope talking into my phone. So I got to change my guitar strings so I can take my guitar with me on this little retreat. Maybe play some songs. So I'm going to read scripture. I'm going to do that in another video. I'm going to upload it. We're on Mark 9. I'm going to write a song too, right in front of you. That's it for now.